If you've ever had one of your A players seemingly quit on you out of nowhere, chances are you thought it was due to the money. But the truth here may shock you because it has nothing to do with pay and everything to do with one of these 4 fixable problems we're going to talk about in today's video. And we know this best because we've helped some of the biggest companies out there like Dell, Bose, and PepsiCo address one of these problems head on in order to improve their employee morale and to lower employee turnover. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also able to share with you my perspective as someone who's been both an employee and a manager across various organizations and has seen these scenarios play out time and time again. So, without further ado, why don't we dive right in to the first problem that might be plaguing your organization, and that is, of course, chaotic systems that make work harder than it needs to be. Now look, this is a problem that can plague the biggest of organizations and even the smallest ones that claim to have a flat hierarchy. What happens is that employees, especially new ones, tend to feel like they're spending more time trying to get answers to their questions as opposed to doing the work that they were hired to do. Usually this is questions for feedback or approval, or even sometimes just sourcing information about a product or service. If your best players feel like they're fighting the system and have to put more work into that than their actual work, then you know this is quite the problem you're having. Getting answers to your questions should almost be instantaneous in this day and age. And if it's not, at the very minimum, it should take minutes and not hours. Let me give you a great example I remember vividly to this day. There was a new employee that started at a company that was fully in office back when that was a thing. I remember seeing them start and they had a question naturally. So they started to go desk to desk because at the time it was a lot quicker to ask someone in person as opposed to sending an email. I saw this person ping pong all across the office, almost doing laps to a certain point until I finally stopped them and asked them what their question was. And lo and behold, I was able to answer that question and they were able to get back to their work. Now, if it wasn't for me noticing this and intervening, this person might spend God knows how much time trying to get an answer to their question. So it's important that you constantly audit your workflows and just like I did, talk to your employees every so often. See what the friction points are. See what they're trying to solve. You'll never have a perfect system, of course, because new people are constantly coming in, but you can reduce these friction points and make their employee experience that much better. That way, they're less likely to start looking away when problems come ahead. But all that said, even when you have solid systems in place and solid foundations and people can get their questions answered on a timely notice, there's still something else lingering in the background to this day, and that is, of course, burnout. Now, these days with the hustle and grind culture, people are constantly comparing themselves. And it's only even more magnified with the added layer of social media like LinkedIn, where people are constantly posting statuses about their wins or title promotions. I mean, heck, I've done it myself a few times. You start seeing these people who are constantly working overtime or starting their workday at 5 a.m. and you feel like you're being left behind and you're not doing enough. This problem is even exacerbated by the fact that a lot of these people don't tend to take time off to rest and recharge. It becomes a really big problem in your organization when employees have a tough time taking that time off because of guilt or other reasons. And then on top of it, they have no easy way to do so. There's no approval process. They have to go through 3 different managers. And at a certain point, they just give up and say, maybe I'm not supposed to take that time off. But studies have shown time and time again that taking the time to rest and relax and recharge your brain has not only increased productivity, but of course has increased employee satisfaction. And that's why it's important that you take the time to establish clear policies in place and just make it easy for your employees to take time off by using a tool like Vacation Tracker. A tool like this makes it so easy to know who's in charge of giving you approval, makes it easy for you to check your balances at any time, and of course, monitor how much time off you have left in a year so you know how to plan accordingly. It also just makes it easy for anyone to check who's off at a given notice so you can also manage workloads. Combining all this is going to go a long way into improving the health and morale of your employees. Now for problem 3, here's something that costs you nothing to do, but can cost you everything if you don't do it at all. And that is a lack of recognition or a lack of autonomy. Now these two kind of go hand in hand and you'll quickly see why. Lack of recognition obviously is when an employee doesn't get praised for the good work that they do. And a lack of autonomy means that they're being micromanaged or not trusted with the responsibilities that they have. These go hand in hand because if you start to micromanage, then they start to take that as a lack of recognition, that you don't trust them to do a good enough job, so you constantly have to intervene. Your top performers do not want to be managed to this point. They want to be trusted with the responsibilities that they have so that they can perform and make your company proud. Here's a great example that I experienced early on in my career. I remember at the time I was working at a company as doing stuff for social media, and we had just won an award. And my task was just to reshare the post from the company page with like a sentence saying thank you for the award or something along those lines. I remember this vividly at the time because it was basically not much work, right? You're just writing one sentence, and a company page on LinkedIn these days, no one really checks those. But they felt it was required to go through 3 different hands of approvals in order to get sign off. I just remember feeling so useless and questioning what was the point of even having this go through different hands or having me write this. Surely someone else could have taken the time to just put a sentence together. This just goes to show that these little micro actions really start to add up. And of course, as may not be clear by now, but I'm no longer with that company. Your great employees want to feel valued and trusted. And when you have a buildup of all these actions, they start to take notice and start to wonder about maybe leaving the company. So it's important that you always try to give praise for the wins, big or small, and do it sporadically. Don't feel like you need to wait for a performance review or some scheduled meeting in order to give them the public praise. Let them know in a Teams or Slack message, whether it's on a channel or just personally to them. It goes a long way. And then, of course, delegating and giving them real responsibilities, knowing that you trust them, is going to go a long way to making them feel valued. All right, so we've covered chaotic systems, we've covered burnout, we've covered a lack of recognition and or autonomy. But all these 3 problems are really symptoms of a larger problem that might be plaguing your organization. And that is, of course, bad company habits, or more commonly known as bad company culture. All these decisions that are made at the company, from having things being too confusing or too much friction for employees to get the questions, to having a hustle culture that almost encourages burnout, and of course, not giving them proper recognition or proper responsibilities. These are all things that contribute to a bad company culture. When you claim you have work-life balance, but then have employees working past work hours or even on weekends, then you're not doing what you're saying. And employees do take notice. At a certain point, there's only so much they can take, and that just causes them to leave that much quicker. The same thing goes if you require multiple approvals or there's a lot of red tape for them to go through. Again, like I mentioned before, you start to feel minimized and you start questioning your value in this machine, and that's why employees tend to start looking elsewhere. Now, it's always important to align your policies with your actions as much as possible, and to always, and I stress this, always communicate clearly. Having a section on your company portal, or maybe you have an employee handbook that's shared around, makes it easier so everyone has an understanding of responsibilities, policies when it comes to time off, and of course, when it comes to questions. A great example that I have from a company I worked at that to this day I still remember is when I was getting onboarded at the company, they dedicated someone to be my quote unquote buddy. And that was the go-to person for all my questions during the probation period. And what was nice about this is that the buddy was someone from a different department. So not only did I have someone I can ask questions to, but it allowed me to create a connection with someone outside of my immediate department. And that's just one example of what you can use when it comes to having a great onboarding process and creating a good company culture. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, but of course, trying to remove yourself as much as possible from daily decisions so that you're not a bottleneck goes a long way in making a better environment. So really take the time to address those 4 problems in your company, and I promise you, your employee retention is going to skyrocket. Now, earlier, I did touch upon systems, and I do want to make note that, as we know, systems are one of the highest leverage things that you can do to have your company and grow. And I've noticed that there's a lot of different videos and articles talking about all these different systems, and it can become quite confusing very quickly. So that's why I took it upon myself to create my own video to highlight the 4 essential systems that you need to implement. Now, these are 4 very important systems that you should have in your business in order to have it run without you. And this covers everything from onboarding, fulfillment, to time off, to growth. So I highly recommend you check it out. These systems are a game changer if you're looking to have exponential growth within your business. So hopefully I will see you in that video.